Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Maya Patemi. Getting right back into it. Last night was the first game for the Denver Nuggets without their longtime 10-year head coach, Mike Malone. Mike Malone obviously being dismissed as head coach of the Denver Nuggets on Tuesday now. Yep. Along with their GM, I believe Chris Booth. I'm trying to remember his first name. I apologize. But overall, the Denver Nuggets having their first game, taking down the Sacramento Kings 124-116 last night. Denver honestly played phenomenal last night, I'd say. They really spread the ball around. 4 players getting into 20-plus points. Christian Braun leading the team with 25. Nikola Jokic with a 20-point triple-double. Michael Porter Jr. with 21 points, and a player that continues to be an X factor for this team time and time again, in Aaron Gordon finishing with 21 points. Aaron Gordon is the definition of an X factor, a player that can shoot, with Nikola Jokic being able to take some of the pressure off Jokic on the offensive glass, being able to stretch the floor, being able to shoot the three. The only player I can really compare to him is he's much shorter and he's much bigger, but he's very similar to the way Kristaps Porzingis plays in Boston, with how Porzingis stretches the floor, is able to shoot the three, and overall being able to just take over games. That's how Aaron Gordon plays in a similar fashion. And he's critical. He's played critical time and time again this season. But the Nuggets snapping a 4-game losing streak last night with their win. Major props to Daniel Adelman in his first game as interim head coach of the Denver Nuggets. Obviously, on Tuesday we saw, like I said, Mike Malone being fired, and as well as the GM for the Denver Nuggets being released. I don't want to get too deep into the logistics about what happened, but long story short, pretty much it was a scheming issue. Mike Malone wanted to kind of utilize the veterans of the team more, while the GM wanted to utilize, and the ownerships wanted to use the young talent more often, more of the Christian Brauns, the Michael Porter Jr.'s, the Jalen Pickett's of the world. I was about to say Kenny Pickett. It's not football. But overall, that's been the one thing that I noticed last night. David Adelman really playing a crucial role in using the young talent in last night's game. Like I said, Christian Braun leading the team in scoring. Jalen Pickett finishing with 18 points, using him much more down the stretch, versus when Mike Malone was coaching, he would use a Russell Westbrook, so to speak, much more, or a Michael Porter Jr. The team is just expanding their view a little bit more, and there's gains and there's goods and there's pros and cons with it, I'd say. Just starting with the good, it kind of just helps overall. It helps these young guys speed up their experience, give them more experience, speed up their improvement and growth in the NBA. And on the other side, of course, the veterans really getting hit hard. Russell Westbrook, obviously on the tail end of his career, he's had a lot of in-game experience. Michael Malone just using that to his advantage instead of taking the gamble of using the young talent. But overall, like I said, this has just been a team that's been through it all season long. They had a 4-game losing streak prior to the Mike Malone firing. In that span as well was the game against the Minnesota Timberwolves when Russell Westbrook missed a layup, and ensuing right after that fouled a 3-point shooter, putting the Minnesota Timberwolves on the line in double overtime to win the game. I don't want to say that had something to do with what happened with the final decision in Denver, but I can't say that it helped Mike Malone's case in the fact that Mike Malone just Mike Malone just didn't have Mike Malone and the ownership just didn't have um, similar and agreeing mindsets and schemes overall. That was the biggest thing in Denver, and that clash between the older players and the younger players is what ended up really spelling his demise or his tenure, ending his tenure in Denver. Um, like I said, overall, um, this team can. I personally thought before the firing happened, I personally still had the Denver Nuggets still being incredibly competitive in the Western Conference. I thought they were a team that didn't really care too much about their seeding come playoff time. As long as they got in, they didn't care. You see it with Jamal Murray getting some extra rest at the moment. He's been out of the lineup for the last 2 or 3 weeks or so. That has a lot to do with that 4-game losing streak as well. But yeah, this is the first time. This is the first time we've seen the Denver Nuggets without Mike Malone as their head coach, and it's going to be interesting to see how this team moves forward. We saw Nikola Jokic in the timeout helping scheme up plays, and it's going to be interesting to see how the veterans, how Jokic feels about everything, how he ends up responding come this summer. There have been a little bit of rumors. I'm not going to get in too deep, too crazy about that. I'm not going to get into that, but yeah, that's the state of the Denver Nuggets at the moment. They have a whole lot to play for. Of course, they won a championship 2 years ago. Last year, dropping 2 in a row to the Minnesota Timberwolves after having a 3-2 lead in the series, losing Game 7 back home in Denver. It was just I keep saying this word, but it was just overall unfortunate for the Denver Nuggets. And we all know that a healthy Nikola Jokic and a healthy Jamal Murray are a top duo, not only in the Western Conference, but in the NBA as a whole. So if they can stay healthy, if Jamal Murray can come back healthy the way he was and play the way he was mid-season prior to getting hurt, I think this team can still go on a run. I think they still have the pieces. They still have the depth on their bench. Their defense is incredibly deep. They're still a formidable team in the Western Conference, with or without Mike Malone. It's just going to depend on how if David Adelman's scheme works. If the young talent does not end up working out for this team, that could be a major thing in this game, in this season. Could be a lot of people would point the finger at that and say, why did you fire Mike Malone? What was the reason for it overall? But that's the state of the Denver Nuggets at the moment. I have been a little bit choppy with them, with a lot of the teams in the Western Conference. But coming up next, I kind of want to get into everything that I've missed out on. I want to update everything in the Western Conference, how everybody sits, and give a little bit of a prediction at what we could see come next week and come 2 weeks from now when these playoffs begin. Next week, of course, is when the play-in tournament begins, and the playoffs should start the following weekend. I'm gonna give a prediction on all of that, and we're gonna take a look at the updated Western Conference. I'm gonna take a short break, and when I come